2 Samuel 24, 1 Chronicles 21 and 22, and Psalm 30. At the near end of David's life, an event happens that's mostly memorable because of this severe punishment that God gave to David for what happened. We're told in 1 Chronicles 21 that thus Satan, and again that word can just mean the accusing one, we're not given a name, but an accusing spirit, created spirit, persuaded David, and the word is just the general word for enticing or persuading, persuaded David to number his military. And David does so. And by the way, it seems to be a sin of pride. David will say in Psalm 19:13, "Keep me back from proudful sins," as though he knew that this was the kind of sin. I mean, he's guilty of many kinds of sins, obviously. But when it comes to sin of just pure pride, David, I think, knew, and this is why God punished him here so severely, because it's a special kind of sin, almost a deeper sin of the soul. But anyway, the Satan figure is the one who persuades David to do that. The challenge is that in the 2 Samuel passage, chapter 24, verse 1, we have it said this way: "Now the Lord moved David to say, 'Go number Israel and Judah.'" So which is it? Does Satan or the Satan figure do it, or does Yahweh persuade David? I think the answer comes by looking at two other texts of our previous study and noticing what we can say. In Exodus 24 or 4:24, we heard this: "It came to pass that the Lord met Moses and sought to kill him." A very odd moment. We also have back in Job 42, verse 11, this statement. Job's brothers and sisters, after the whole event of Job, of course, they came and consoled him for all the adversity that the Lord had brought upon him. Well, we know, and here's the key, I believe, to how we can solve this. We know that back in chapters 1 and 2, the Satan figure was the one who brought all this adversity upon Job. It so much as says so. At the end of the story, the writer says, well, remember who gets ultimate credit for anything that happens above this dotted line. This, by the way, gives me a chance to quote from that famous book that we all wanted read to us at bedtime, Lesser Deities in the Ugaritic Texts in the Hebrew Bible, talking about how messenger spirits did their messaging in relation to the sender. In ancient Semitic literature, messengers often did not distinguish themselves from their sender when delivering messages, so that the messengers speak in the first person, as if the sender of the message speaks. This formula may be applied in the same way to delivering patterns of physical or divine messengers. The point being, and we've seen this, where the Spirit will say I, but they're speaking for the one who has sent them. And the point is here, the factuality of the case seems to be that the Satan figure is the one who persuades David. But because of the, let's just say, the theological summation of the whole story, we can still say, and the 2 Samuel passage says, God is behind this in some strange way. He is the ultimate authority in this story. All right, one other thing that I want to mention as we close this, and I think this would be a good time to deal with something we've seen before. Parallel texts in our Bible offer us a window into, well, factual issues that the Jewish Bible has that they were happy to have. And what I mean by that is factual differences that are in these two stories, the 2 Samuel and the 1 Chronicles story, that clearly are not the same. For example, the number on the census is different in the two different passages. The options, the three options that God gives David in terms of punishment, they are different in the two passages. So what we cannot say, and here we have to deal with those words like inspiration and authority and inerrancy, but what we cannot say, because it's right in front of us, is that the factual text is there, or that the facts are perfect, because we clearly have differences. Both texts can't be factually correct. So how do we use the word perfect when it comes to our Bible? Well, I think the answer is just in the practical sense of how we often speak even in American English. We'll say we had the perfect vacation, even though we had a pebble in our shoe at one point. Or Tom Brady had the perfect season, but he threw an interception along the way. In other words, we can speak of perfection in the story sense, the larger picture. And I think this is where we need to understand biblical authority. Even in dealing with my atheist friends, they like to pick on the factual differences or the factual problems that the Bible may present. I find it interesting that when I take them to the actual story of Scripture, what's the biggest point that the Scripture is trying to make, they get even more uncomfortable, because that's where the authority of Scripture wants to be found. And that's often my prayer when I come to study these daily doses and present our thoughts. My prayer is, Lord, the facts satisfy our curiosities, but the story is what satisfies our soul.